the South Korean economy is so much different and so much better than the North Korean economy. So just by way of background, I've read a few books on North Korea, and I'm doing some translation, North Korean translation right now with a professor here. So I'm really interested in North Korea, especially their economic system and how it's crumbling in on itself right now. To start out, after the Korean War, North Korea had a vastly superior economy and military force than the South Koreans. That's what facilitated their, or excuse me, after World War II. That's what facilitated their attack and their invasion of South Korea. The reason that that they had that strength was because of strong support from China and Russia. Almost all the military might that they had, all the tanks, all the guns, all the weapons came from Russia or China. Even though South Korea had more of the workforce and production, North Korea was much more powerful. However, you see that as North Korea became a closed economy and as they pretty much made themselves a hermit state, their major trading partners were Russia and China after the Korean War. But as they did that, and South Korea opened themselves up, in the 70s and 80s, South Korea started to just blossom and explode. Part of that is due to the leadership of Park Chung-hee. He was president for 18 years and pretty much just took control of everything. And he had a really strong hand in guiding the economic policy of the country. So they start to expand and really overtake North Korea. Their GDP just expands dramatically while North Korea shrinks year after year. The part of this is because as Mikhail Gorbachev came into power in Russia and the Soviet Union collapsed, they started removing themselves from North Korea quite a bit. Up to that time, all of North Korea's crude oil and much of their trading, import-exports has been with Russia, but after that change in policy, they really started to hurt. So the current economic model, now that you have that historical background, North Korea is central planning communistic. So they have communal farms, and all the farmers are required to give a certain percentage of their crops to the government, and then the government distributes those. It's a closed economy, so they don't have open trade with a lot of nations in the world. You can kind of understand that because if you're starting to take in products from America and from Europe, you're going to kind of undermine the propaganda that you've been spreading when people start to see the quality of products from other countries. In 2002, though, due to economic hardships and widespread famine, they started to allow small free market farmers markets to pop up and some private farming. Because of the highly restricted nature of North Korea and because their economy is in such dire straits, a huge black market has sprung up. You'll have the husband who goes to work every day in kind of a symbolic fashion. He makes no real wages. A lot of the workers actually that are officially employed have no wage. It's part of the propaganda scheme to lower the costs. What the government says is, come to work anyway, even though we can't pay you, because it's good for the country. The way they make it by, though, is that their wives, while they're off at this symbolic job, their wives are engaged in these black market activities. They'll grow their own food in a private garden, or they'll start their own market business on the side and support the family with that income. So due to some skyrocketing inflation in the latter part of the 2000s and the large black market we talked about, North Korea redenominated its currency to control the inflation. What that means is basically they said, whereas now it's about 8,500 won to a dollar, we're going to take that, change our currency, and set it at 145 won to the dollar. And the problem with this is that all these people in the black market have these illegal sources of income, and it's all in paper, since if you store it in banks, the government becomes aware. So they have this huge savings of income, and when the government changes its currency, all of that paper money that they've saved up becomes worthless. And they can't go and exchange it, otherwise the government will know that they've been engaging in illegal activity. Because where else could this massive wealth come from? So it eliminated the savings of a lot, and the fact that they only gave them a one-week time period to exchange their currency really destroyed what was left of the economy. Inflation skyrocketed, savings plummeted, and economic productivity really stagnated quite a bit. It also led to mass protests around the country. Another interesting thing is that Korea, in its effort to be a propaganda state, lists their exchange at 147 won to the dollar. So if you go to a North Korean bank and you give them an American dollar, they'll give you 147 won. However, on the black market, what the actual value of the won is, what people will actually get to trade for it, is 4,000 won to the dollar. So there's a huge discrepancy there. Another part of North Korea's economic graph that shows you the rise of inflation. Later. So this is where you had 2009, the revaluation of the currency right here. You notice that it drops to almost zero. And then over time, and this is $1 per dollar, over only a few years, it dramatically, I mean, that's like a 2,000% increase in only the course of a few years. And this also is a big part of their economic policy right now. Let's get into some of the stats. Now, these stats are calculated by the CIA because North Korea doesn't release their economic statistics. They don't like anyone else to know the problems that they have. This statistic right here is the GDP in purchasing power parity. What that means is if you took the amount of goods that are sold in a year in North Korea and sold them in the United States, it would equal $40 billion of worth. So their entire country makes about $40 billion per year. The real growth rate is 0.8%, and their per capita per year, so a family or an individual makes only $1,800 per year. As compared with what you saw with South Korea, 20-something thousand, that's quite a big disparity. The labor force is 12.2 million, and just so you know how they're making their money, 23% of their GDP comes through agriculture, 47% through industry, and 29.4% through services. You'll also notice that of this industry, the majority of their production is militarily. So they create missiles and military goods and sell those to other countries. Imports, exports. So the amount of money they make in exports per year is about $4 billion. What they export to other countries is minerals. North Korea is mineral rich, and metallurgical products, manufacturing, so those are the armaments, the missiles, the guns that we've been talking about. Textiles. Now the textiles, I've never really understood why they can make money off of textiles, because the kind of textiles they produce, it's almost like a polyester. It's a really shiny, kind of a hard fabric, nothing like the cotton or the soft fabrics that we know in the United States. So it's a mystery to me why they make money off of that, but there you have it. And then agriculture and fishery products. And since Russia has dropped out, China has become their main source of support since they're practically closed. So 67% of their exports go to China, and then to North Korea 20%, India 3%. In terms of imports, it's about the same, so they're running an export surplus. They import petroleum, coking coal, for their steel plants and such. Machinery and equipment, textiles and grain. And again, China makes up the majority of their trading. So with this kind of explains to you why China's recent endorsement of economic sanctions because of their nuclear activity is such a blow to North Korea. When your biggest trading partner, who makes up 60% of your gross imports and exports, decides to start to sanction you because of your nuclear program, that's a huge problem for you. So that may explain some of the rhetoric that's going on right now about how they're becoming more and more bombastic with declaring war on South Korea, because they're really in a big problem right now. One of the biggest problems that North Korea has with their economy is their government spending. Because of the diversion of a huge proportion of their income to the military, the economic situation of the country is really bad. There's essentially no investment. And what that means is when you have a citizenry, they make a certain amount of income and they save. And what they save goes into the bank, and then companies can invest that money. They loan funds from the bank and they invest in plants, production equipment, and capital. But what you have is that the government takes all of that money, they're essentially going into debt, and they spend it on military power. So that crowds out the investment. As a result of that, the investor capital they have is beyond repair. They have no spare parts, their factories are broken down, and the people don't have enough money to exist beyond subsistence. They can't save for the future, they can't improve their future prospects with more capital. Their deficit spending is negative 4%, 0.4%. So now the real question is, you see sometimes, you have to wonder that whether or not there's a wealthy class in Korea. Because the literature that I've read points to the fact that if you get into the Workers' Party, into the army essentially, you're set for life. And you have to wonder, do the upper echelons of the Workers' Party have a lot of wealth? There's not a ton of data on that. We do know that a wealthy class began to emerge around 2005. And the reason is because the underground capitalistic market became more palatable. to the regime. They saw the money it was providing and the economic stability it was providing. And so in fact, if you go to Pyongyang today, you'll see private businesses on the streets. You'll see restaurants, you'll see probably cobblers, you know, just basic businesses that are privately run, which is dramatic change from how it's been. Also influence from illegally imported foreign merchandise and media is making a difference too. As people watch South Korean dramas or hear American radio, they realize that there's a better life out there, so they start to engage in illegal activities. And because everyone is doing it, the government is recognizing it more and more. And then just to give kind of summary on the North Korean situation. This is from the CIA. So, just to point out a few things. Large-scale military spending draws off resources needed for investment, and their weather problems, their droughts, have aggravated their chronic food shortages. Going on, this is an important point here. Since 2002, the government has allowed private farmers markets on an experimental basis to boost agricultural output. And then it talks about the redenomination we talked about. And the most important part I want to get out here is kind of an overall summary, which is right here. The North Korean government often highlights its goal of becoming a strong and prosperous nation and attracting foreign investment, a key factor to improving the overall standard of living. Nevertheless, firm political control remains the government's overriding concern, which likely will inhibit fundamental reforms of North Korea's current economic system. So when all is said and done, it's going to be really hard for North Korea, to really become economically stable while the current system of military first and the strict political control exists in that country. And this is probably the main deterrent to reunification, I would think. South Korean economists say, you know, ideally reunification is great, we've all been talking about it, but from an economic point of view, it would be disastrous. It would be worse than when East and West Germany combined again. Both economies would plummet, and the fact that this ideology has existed in North Korea for so long would create major problems for meshing of lifestyles and cultures with the two countries. So that's the basic overview of North Korean economy. Do you have any questions for me?